I need to tell you something that most people will never understand about presence. About magnetism. About that indefinable quality we call cool. And I'm not talking about the manufactured version you see on social media. The carefully curated aesthetic that screams desperation beneath its polished surface. I'm talking about something far more ancient, far more powerful, and completely beyond the reach of those who try too hard. There are 5 zodiac signs who possess a frequency so rare, so authentically compelling, that they command attention without ever asking for it. And here's what makes this moment so critical. We are living through a cosmic recalibration that is amplifying this natural magnetism to levels we haven't seen in decades. If you've noticed certain people seeming to glow with an almost supernatural presence lately, if you felt yourself inexplicably drawn to individuals who seem to operate on a different wavelength entirely, you're not imagining it. The universe is turning up the volume on authentic power, and these 5 signs are the ones holding the microphone. But before I reveal which signs these are, I need you to understand something fundamental about what coolness actually is. Because most people have it completely backwards. They think it's about confidence, about swagger, about knowing how to work a room. And while those things might create a temporary impression, they're not the source of true magnetic presence. Real coolness. The kind that makes people remember you years after a single conversation. The kind that shifts the energy of an entire space the moment you walk in. Comes from something much deeper. It comes from an internal alignment so complete, so unshakable, that you become a gravitational force in human form. Have you felt it? That subtle recognition when you're in the presence of someone who doesn't need your validation, doesn't need your approval, doesn't even seem to register that they're being watched. There's a quality to their movement, to their silence, to the way they occupy space that feels almost otherworldly. It's not arrogance, because arrogance is just insecurity wearing a mask. It's not aloofness, because aloofness is just fear dressed up as disinterest. It's something else entirely. It's the energy signature of someone who has found the frequency of their own soul and decided to broadcast it without apology, without explanation, without the slightest concern for whether anyone else understands. And here's what the universe wants you to know right now. This quality is not randomly distributed. It's not luck. It's not genetics. It's written in the cosmic blueprint, encoded in the moment of birth, activated by planetary alignments that most people never even notice. These 5 signs carry a specific energetic configuration that makes them natural transmitters of magnetic presence. They don't have to learn it, don't have to practice it, don't have to fake it until they make it. It's simply who they are at the cellular level, at the soul level, at the frequency level that determines how reality responds to them. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're wondering if your sign made the list. You're hoping, or maybe you're skeptical, thinking this is just another astrology video making broad generalizations that could apply to anyone. But I'm going to ask you to stay with me, because what I'm about to share goes far beyond sun sign astrology. We're talking about archetypal energies, about cosmic frequencies, about the invisible architecture that determines who becomes unforgettable and who fades into the background noise of existence. The first sign we need to discuss is one that might surprise you, because they're often misunderstood, often underestimated, often dismissed as too intense or too much. But that's exactly why they command attention without trying. I'm talking about Scorpio. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is predictable, let me explain what's actually happening on an energetic level when a Scorpio enters a space. It's not about mystery for mystery's sake. It's not about playing games or cultivating an aura of danger. What Scorpio carries is something far more primal, far more ancient. They operate on the frequency of transformation itself, of death and rebirth, of the raw power that exists beneath the surface of polite society. And human beings are hardwired to recognize that frequency, to be drawn to it, to feel simultaneously attracted and unsettled by it. Think about it this way. Most people live their entire lives in the shallow end of experience, skimming across the surface of their own emotions, their own desires, their own darkness. They've been trained to be palatable, to be safe, to be easy to digest. But Scorpio refuses that bargain. They dive deep. They embrace the shadow. They're willing to look at what everyone else pretends doesn't exist. And that willingness, that fearlessness in the face of psychological and emotional depth, creates a magnetic field that others can feel even if they can't articulate it. When a Scorpio walks into a room, they're not trying to be noticed. In fact, many Scorpios would prefer to observe from the periphery, to watch and assess before engaging. But their energy precedes them like a shockwave. People feel it in their bodies, in that subtle tightening of awareness, in that sudden hypervigilance that kicks in when something powerful is nearby. It's the same instinct that makes you turn around when you're being watched. The same primal recognition that alerts you to the presence of a predator or a force of nature. But here's what makes Scorpio's magnetism so effortless. They're not performing it. They're not calculating it. They're simply being exactly what they are. Which is a concentrated dose of intensity in a world that's been diluted to the point of meaninglessness. And in this current cosmic climate, with Pluto having just completed its transit through Capricorn and now settling into Aquarius, Scorpio's natural Plutonian energy is being amplified in ways that are making them even more magnetically powerful than usual. Does this resonate with you? Have you noticed the Scorpios in your life seeming to glow with an almost dangerous allure lately? Have you felt yourself drawn to their energy even when logic tells you to keep your distance? The second sign that commands attention without trying operates on a completely different frequency, but one that's secretly impossible to ignore. I'm talking about Leo, and I can already hear the objections. Leo? But they're always performing, always seeking attention, always making sure they're the center of the show. How is that effortless? But here's what most people miss about Leo energy. The ones who are truly magnetic, the ones who embody the highest expression of this sign, aren't performing at all. They're radiating. There's a crucial difference. Performance requires an audience, requires validation, requires constant feedback to sustain itself. Radiation simply is. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need applause. It exists whether anyone is watching or not. The Leo who has stepped into their authentic power isn't trying to be the sun. They are the sun. And the sun doesn't worry about whether the planets are paying attention. It doesn't dim its light when clouds pass by. It doesn't question whether it's shining brightly enough or if maybe it should tone it down so others don't feel overshadowed. It simply burns with the full force of its nature, and everything else organizes itself around that central fire. This is the Leo magnetism that commands attention without effort. It's not about charisma in the traditional sense, not about charm or wit or knowing how to work a crowd. It's about an internal conviction so absolute, a self-possession so complete, that it creates a gravitational field. People orbit around these Leos not because they're demanding attention, but because their energy is so warm, so vital, so alive that being near them feels like standing in sunlight after a long winter. And here's the psychological mechanism at work. Human beings are drawn to certainty. We're drawn to people who know who they are, who aren't apologizing for their existence, who aren't constantly seeking permission to take up space. In a world where most people are performing a version of themselves they think others want to see, the Leo who has dropped the performance entirely and simply exists in their full solar glory becomes a beacon. They become the reference point around which everyone else calibrates their own energy. But there's something happening right now that's making Leo's natural magnetism even more potent. With the North Node having recently transitioned into Aries, there's a cosmic emphasis on authentic self-expression, on courage, on the willingness to be seen in your full truth without apology. And Leo, as a fire sign that shares Aries' elemental nature, is being supercharged by this transit. The Leos who have been dimming their light, who have been playing small, who have been trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for their magnitude, are being cosmically pushed to step into their full radiance. And when they do, the effect is nothing short of mesmerizing. Have you noticed this shift? Have you seen the Leos in your life suddenly seeming more confident, more self-assured, more willing to take up the space they've always deserved? Have you felt the pull of their energy becoming stronger, more undeniable? The third sign that possesses this effortless magnetism might surprise you even more, because they're often overlooked in conversations about charisma and presence. But that's exactly why their power is so profound. I'm talking about Capricorn. Now, Capricorn doesn't command attention through flash or drama or emotional intensity. They command it through something far more subtle and far more enduring. Authority. Not the kind of authority that comes from a title or a position, but the kind that emanates from someone who has mastered themselves, who has climbed their own internal mountain, who carries the weight of their own discipline and dedication like a crown that no one else can see but everyone can feel. When a Capricorn walks into a room, there's a shift in the atmospheric pressure. It's not loud, it's not obvious, but it's unmistakable. Suddenly, people sit up a little straighter. Conversations become more focused. The energy becomes more grounded, more serious, more real, because Capricorn carries the frequency of consequence, of time, of the understanding that actions have weight and words have meaning, and nothing in this universe is without its price. This is a deeply compelling energy in a world that's increasingly unmoored from reality, increasingly lost in the fantasy of instant gratification and consequence-free existence. Capricorn reminds us, just by being in the room, that gravity still exists, that effort still matters, that mastery is still possible for those willing to pay the price, and that reminder, delivered not through words but through pure energetic transmission, is magnetic in ways that most people can't closely understand but can definitely feel. The Capricorn who has truly stepped into their power doesn't need to announce their accomplishments. They don't need to prove their worth. They don't need to convince anyone of their capability. It's written in their posture, in their gaze, in the way they move through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who has already conquered the only opponent that matters, themselves. And that self-mastery creates a field of respect that others enter automatically, without even realizing they're doing it. But here's what makes Capricorn's magnetism particularly potent right now. And this is something you need to understand if you want to grasp the full scope of what's happening cosmically. Pluto just spent 15 years in Capricorn, from 2008 to 2023, completely dismantling and reconstructing the very foundations of authority, structure, and power in our collective reality. And the Capricorns who survived that transit, who allowed themselves to be broken down and rebuilt by Pluto's relentless transformative force, have emerged with a kind of tempered strength that is absolutely magnetic. They're not the same people they were before. They've been forged in the cosmic fire of the most intense planetary transit of our generation. And what remains is pure, concentrated power. Think about what that means on a practical level. These Capricorns have faced their own limitations, their own fears, their own shadow material around control and achievement and worth. They've had to let go of outdated definitions of success, outdated structures that no longer serve them, outdated versions of themselves that were built on external validation rather than internal integrity. And what emerges from that kind of alchemical process is someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, because they've already proven everything to themselves in the crucible of their own transformation. Does this land for you? Have you noticed the Capricorns in your life carrying themselves differently, speaking with more authority, commanding respect in ways that feel almost effortless? Have you felt the weight of their presence? That sense that you're in the company of someone who has earned their power through actual lived experience rather than borrowed it from external sources. Now, the fourth sign that possesses this quality of effortless magnetism is one that operates on such a refined frequency that many people miss it entirely. They're looking for the obvious, the loud, the dramatic, and they completely overlook the subtle mastery of Libra. And I know what you're thinking. Libra? The people pleaser? The one who can't make a decision? The one who's always trying to keep everyone happy? How could that possibly be magnetic? But that's exactly the misconception I need to shatter. Because the Libra who has stepped into their authentic power is one of the most magnetically compelling forces in the entire Zodiac. And here's why. Libra doesn't command attention through force or intensity or authority. They command it through harmony, through aesthetic perfection, through the ability to create beauty and balance in every space they occupy. And beauty, real beauty, not the manufactured Instagram version but the kind that touches something deep in the human soul, is one of the most powerful forces in existence. It's why we stand transfixed before great art, why we weep at sublime music, why we feel our hearts crack open in the presence of something truly beautiful. Beauty is a frequency that bypasses the rational mind and speaks directly to the soul. And Libra is the Zodiac's master of that frequency. When a Libra who has mastered their energy walks into a room, they don't just occupy space, they curate it. They elevate it. They transform it into something more refined, more graceful, more aesthetically coherent than it was before they arrived. And this isn't about vanity or superficiality. This is about understanding that the external world is a reflection of internal states, and that by bringing beauty and harmony to the external, you're actually performing a kind of energetic alchemy that affects everyone present. But here's the deeper layer that most people miss about Libra's magnetism. Beneath the grace and the charm and the aesthetic mastery, there's something far more powerful at work. Libra is a cardinal sign, which means they're initiators, they're leaders, they're forces of action disguised in velvet gloves, and they're ruled by Venus. But not the soft, passive Venus that popular astrology often portrays. We're talking about Venus as the morning star, Venus as the warrior goddess. Venus is the force that knows exactly what it wants and has the strategic intelligence to get it without ever appearing to break a sweat. The Libra who has integrated both sides of their nature, the harmony-seeking diplomat and the strategic cardinal initiator, becomes almost unstoppable in their magnetism. They can read a room with surgical precision. They can navigate complex social dynamics like a grand master playing chess. They can make you feel like the most important person in the world while simultaneously advancing their own agenda in ways you won't even notice until much later. And they do all of this with such grace, such apparent effortlessness, that you never feel manipulated. You just feel enchanted. And right now, with Venus having recently completed several significant transits and with the ongoing emphasis on relationship dynamics and social structures in our collective evolution, Libra's natural gifts are being amplified. The Libras who have been hiding their strategic intelligence behind a mask of agribalances, who have been dimming their aesthetic power to avoid standing out, who have been playing small to make others comfortable, are being cosmically called to step into their full Venusian authority. And when they do, the effect is magnetic in ways that are almost hypnotic. Have you experienced this? Have you found yourself drawn to someone's presence not because they were loud or dramatic, but because they created such a refined energetic field that you wanted to stay in their orbit? Have you noticed how certain people seem to make everything around them more beautiful, more harmonious, more elevated, just by being present? The fifth and final sign that commands attention without trying is perhaps the most paradoxical of all, because their magnetism comes from a place that seems to contradict everything we think we know about presence and charisma. I'm talking about Aquarius. Aquarius doesn't command attention by trying to fit in. They command it by being so authentically, unapologetically different that they become impossible to ignore. And in a world where everyone is desperately trying to belong, trying to conform, trying to find their tribe and mirror back whatever they think will make them acceptable, the person who genuinely doesn't care about any of that becomes a gravitational anomaly. They become the fixed point in a sea of conformity. And people are drawn to that fixedness even when they don't understand it, even when it makes them uncomfortable, even when it challenges everything they thought they knew about how to be in the world. But here's what makes Aquarius's magnetism so profound and so misunderstood. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's not being different just to be different. It's something far more essential. Aquarius operates on the frequency of the future, of innovation, of the collective evolution that's trying to break through the calcified structures of the past. They're not trying to be weird or eccentric or ahead of their time. They simply are those things, because they're tuned into a frequency that most people can't even perceive yet. When an Aquarius walks into a room, they're not reading the room to figure out how to fit in. They're not calculating what version of themselves will be most acceptable. They're broadcasting their authentic frequency and letting the room adjust to them. And that reversal of the normal social dynamic, where instead of the individual conforming to the group finds itself unconsciously reorganizing around the individual's unique energy, is magnetic in ways that defy conventional understanding. Think about the Aquarians you know who have really stepped into their power. They're not trying to be cool. They're not trying to be magnetic. They're not trying to command attention. They're simply so committed to their own unique vision, their own unique frequency, their own unique way of moving through the world, that they become a beacon for everyone else who's tired of pretending, tired of conforming, tired of living a life that was designed by someone else's expectations. And here's the cosmic timing that makes this particularly significant right now. Pluto just entered Aquarius in 2023, beginning a 20-year transit that will completely transform our understanding of power, community, technology, and collective evolution. This is the most significant astrological event of our generation, and it's putting Aquarius energy at the center of the cosmic stage. The Aquarians who have been feeling like outsiders, like misfits, like they were born in the wrong time or the wrong place, are about to discover that they were actually born exactly when and where they needed to be, because the world is finally catching up to their frequency. Pluto in Aquarius is going to dismantle every outdated structure of authority and hierarchy and control, and it's going to replace them with networks, with decentralization, with the kind of collective intelligence that Aquarius has always understood intuitively. And the Aquarians who have been preparing for this moment, who have been developing their unique gifts and their unique vision even when no one else understood or appreciated them, are about to become the architects of the new paradigm. Their magnetism isn't just personal anymore. It's civilization. It's evolutionary. It's the frequency of the future trying to break through into the present. Have you felt this shift? Have you noticed the Aquarians in your life suddenly seeming more confident, more certain, more willing to share their unconventional ideas and their radical visions? Have you felt yourself drawn to people who think differently, who see differently, who refuse to accept the limitations of consensus reality? Now, here's what ties all 5 of these signs together, and this is the key insight that will help you understand not just why they're magnetic, but how you can cultivate that same quality in yourself regardless of your sun sign. What Scorpio, Leo, Capricorn, Libra, and Aquarius all share is a fundamental refusal to perform a version of themselves that isn't authentic. They've each found different ways to embody this principle, different frequencies through which to express it. But the core mechanism is the same. They're not trying to be anything other than what they are. And that authenticity creates a magnetic field that others can feel even if they can't articulate it. But authenticity alone isn't enough. And this is where most people get it wrong. You can be authentically mediocre. You can be authentically confused. You can be authentically lost. What makes these 5 signs magnetic isn't just that they're authentic. It's that they're authentically aligned with a powerful archetypal frequency. They've tapped into something larger than their individual personality, something cosmic, something that resonates with deep patterns in the collective unconscious. Scorpio has aligned with the frequency of transformation and depth. Leo has aligned with the frequency of solar radiance and creative power. Capricorn has aligned with the frequency of mastery and earned authority. Libra has aligned with the frequency of beauty and strategic harmony. Aquarius has aligned with the frequency of innovation and future consciousness. And when you align with an archetypal frequency that powerfully, you stop being just an individual. You become a channel, a transmitter, a living embodiment of something that everyone recognizes at a soul level even if they've never consciously thought about it. This is why their magnetism is effortless. They're not generating it through personal will or effort. They're allowing it to flow through them from a source that's infinitely larger than their individual ego. They've become hollow bones, To use a shamanic metaphor, through which cosmic energy can move without obstruction. And that unobstructed flow of archetypal power is what creates the magnetic field that others experience as charisma, as presence, as that indefinable quality we call cool. But here's the question that's probably burning in your mind right now. What if you're not one of these 5 signs? What if you're a Cancer or a Gemini or a Pisces reading this and thinking, does this mean I'm destined to fade into the background? Does this mean I'll never possess that effortless magnetism? And this is where I need to be absolutely clear with you. Because the universe doesn't work in hierarchies of better or worse. It works in frequencies, in resonances, in the infinite variety of ways that consciousness can express itself through form. Every single sign has access to magnetic presence. Every single chart contains the seeds of effortless cool. But the path to accessing it looks different depending on your cosmic blueprint. The 5 signs I've discussed today have a more direct line to this frequency, a more natural alignment with the archetypal energies that create magnetic presence. But natural alignment doesn't mean exclusive access. It means they have less work to do to embody it, less deprogramming required, less resistance to overcome. If you're not one of these 5 signs, your work is to find the unique frequency of magnetism that's encoded in your own chart. Maybe you're a Pisces, and your magnetism comes through your ability to dissolve boundaries and create spaces of emotional safety where people can finally exhale and be themselves. Maybe you're a Virgo, and your magnetism emerges through your precision, your discernment, your ability to see what needs to be refined and improved in ways that elevate everything you touch. Maybe you're a Sagittarius, and your magnetism flows through your infectious enthusiasm, your philosophical depth, your ability to make people believe in possibilities they'd given up on. The point is not to become something you're not. The point is to become more fully what you already are. And right now, in this particular cosmic moment, the universe is creating conditions that make authentic self-expression more magnetic than it's been in decades. We're living through a period where the old rules of social acceptability are crumbling, where the manufactured personas that used to work are being seen through, where people are hungry for something real in a world that's become increasingly artificial. And this brings me to something crucial I need you to understand about the current astrological climate. Because it's not just about these 5 signs becoming more magnetic. It's about a collective shift in what magnetism even means, in what we're drawn to, in what commands our attention and respect. With Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years, with the North Node having recently shifted into Aries, with Saturn preparing to enter Pisces and then Aries in the coming years. We're entering a phase where authenticity isn't just valued, it's required. The universe is literally making it impossible to sustain false person, to maintain masks, to keep performing versions of ourselves that aren't aligned with our soul's truth. Have you felt this pressure? Have you noticed how exhausting it's become to pretend, to perform, to maintain the image you thought you needed to project? That exhaustion isn't weakness. It's not failure. It's your soul telling you that the old way of being is no longer sustainable. That something in you is ready to drop the performance and step into your authentic frequency. Whatever that looks like for you. And here's what happens when you make that shift. When you stop trying to be magnetic and simply allow yourself to be authentically you, you discover that magnetism was never about addition. It was always about subtraction. It's not about adding more charisma, more confidence, more performance skills. It's about subtracting the layers of conditioning, the masks of acceptability, the fear-based strategies you develop to survive in environments that weren't designed for your authentic expression. Think about the 5 signs I've discussed today. What makes them magnetic isn't what they've added to themselves. It's what they've refused to subtract from themselves. Scorpio refuses to subtract their intensity. Leo refuses to subtract their radiance. Capricorn refuses to subtract their standards. Libra refuses to subtract their refinement. Aquarius refuses to subtract their uniqueness. They've each drawn a line in the sand and said, "This is non-negotiable. This is who I am." And I'm not dimming it or hiding it or apologizing for it regardless of how it makes others feel. And that refusal, that boundary, that commitment to self-preservation at the level of essence rather than ego, is what creates the magnetic field. Because when you refuse to abandon yourself for the comfort of others, when you refuse to make yourself smaller so others can feel bigger, when you refuse to dim your light so others don't have to confront their own darkness, you become a living demonstration of what's possible. You become proof that authenticity is survivable. That being yourself won't actually kill you. That the rejection you've been so afraid of is far less painful than the slow death of self-betrayal. Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for you as you're listening to this. Especially if you're someone who has spent years trying to fit in, trying to be liked, trying to make yourself acceptable to people who were never going to accept you anyway. You might be feeling a mix of recognition and grief right now. Recognition because some part of you has always known this truth, has always felt the cost of performing, has always sensed that there was another way to be in the world. And grief because you're realizing how much time you've spent betraying yourself, how many opportunities you've missed to be magnetic simply by being yourself, how many connections you've sacrificed on the altar of acceptability. If that's what you're feeling, I want you to know that this grief is sacred. It's not a sign that you've wasted your time or made mistakes. It's a sign that you're waking up, that you're ready to make a different choice, that some part of you is preparing to step into a more authentic expression of your power, and the universe is supporting this awakening in ways that are unprecedented. The cosmic conditions right now are creating a kind of permission field, a collective agreement that it's finally safe to be yourself, that the world is ready for your authentic frequency even if specific individuals in your life aren't. But here's what you need to understand about this transition, because it's not going to be comfortable. When you start showing up authentically, when you start expressing your real frequency instead of the modulated version you've been broadcasting to keep others comfortable, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose opportunities. You're going to lose access to spaces that were only available to you because you were willing to contort yourself to fit through their narrow doorways. And this loss is going to feel like death. Because in a very real sense, it is death. It's the death of the false self. The death of the persona. The death of the version of you that was built to survive rather than to thrive. But on the other side of that death is something extraordinary. On the other side is the discovery that the people and opportunities you lose when you become authentic weren't actually yours to begin with. They belong to the mask, to the performance, to the version of you that was designed to please others rather than express your soul. And as those false connections fall away, space opens up for real connections, for magnetic connections, for the kind of soul-level recognition that only happens when two people are both broadcasting their authentic frequency. This is what the 5 signs I've discussed today understand intuitively. They know that trying to be everything to everyone makes you nothing to anyone. They know that the attempt to be universally liked is the fastest path to being universally forgettable. They know that magnetism requires specificity, requires edges, requires the willingness to be exactly what you are even if that means some people will find you too intense, too bright, too demanding, too strained. Too much. And too much is exactly what you need to be. Not too much in the sense of overwhelming or exhausting or attention-seeking. Too much in the sense of undiluted, unmodulated, uncompromising in your commitment to your own essence. Because the world doesn't need more people who are just enough, who are carefully calibrated to offend no one and inspire no one. The world needs people who are too much, who are so fully themselves that they give others permission to be fully themselves, who are so committed to their authentic frequency that they become beacons for everyone else who's tired of pretending. This is the gift that Scorpio, Capricorn, Libra, and Aquarius are offering to the collective right now. They're not just being magnetic for their own benefit. They're demonstrating what becomes possible when you refuse to abandon yourself. When you commit to your authentic expression regardless of the cost. When you trust that your real frequency will attract exactly what and who is meant for you. They're showing us that cool isn't something you achieve through effort or strategy or performance. It's something you reveal by removing everything that isn't you. By stripping away the conditioning and the fear and the desperate need for approval until all that remains is your essential self. Broadcasting its signal into the universe without apology or explanation. And here's the final piece I need you to understand. The piece that ties everything together and gives you a clear path forward regardless of your sun sign or your current level of magnetic presence. The universe is not asking you to become someone else. It's not asking you to develop qualities you don't have or to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit. What it's asking, what it's demanding actually, is that you become more fully yourself than you've ever been before. That you find your unique frequency and broadcast it with such clarity, such consistency, such unwavering commitment that you become unmistakable, unforgettable, magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because you've finally stopped trying to be anything other than what you are. This is the work. This is the path. This is how you step into effortless magnetism regardless of whether you're one of the 5 signs I've discussed today. You stop adding and start subtracting. You stop performing and start revealing. You stop trying to be cool and start being so authentically yourself that cool becomes irrelevant. Because you've transcended the entire game of trying to impress or attract or command attention. You've found something deeper, something more sustainable, something that doesn't require constant maintenance or validation or proof. You've found your frequency, and you've committed to broadcasting it regardless of who's listening, regardless of who approves, regardless of whether anyone ever understands. And when you make that commitment, when you cross that threshold from performance to presence, from trying to being, something shifts in the fabric of reality around you. People start noticing you differently. Opportunities start appearing that were invisible before. Connections start forming that feel destined rather than forced. Not because you've become more magnetic in the conventional sense, but because you've become more yourself. And your authentic self is inherently magnetic to whatever and whoever is meant to be in your orbit. This is what I want you to take from this conversation today. Not a list of signs to envy or emulate, but a recognition of the principle that underlies all magnetic presence. Authenticity aligned with archetypal power. Essence expressed without apology. The courage to be exactly what you are in a world that's constantly trying to make you into something.